of selectors, how to deal with them. CSS selectors. Yeah. So these are the selectors we learned. A few important selectors. These are all the types of selectors. Attribute selectors, we discussed about how to deal with them. Right. Next, after understanding the attribute selectors, how to use attribute selectors, then we have various other selectors available. We'll see how to use them. Right. Next, after attribute selectors, we have other options like pseudo selectors, how we can use pseudo selectors, pseudo classes. So we have, based on the pseudo options, we have some selectors. Actually, in the selectors, we have pseudo selectors, like we call them as dynamic pseudo classes. Dynamic pseudo classes. So we have dynamic pseudo classes. So why they are called pseudo classes? Because their names look similar to other HTML terminology, but they are not exactly them. That's the reason they are called as pseudo. Actually, they are called as pseudo, right? And generally, so we have to configure effects and define effects based on these pseudo also. How to handle these pseudo selectors, how we can use these pseudo classes. Let's see. Dynamic pseudo classes, we have few. What are those? Let's see. In the dynamic pseudo classes, we have a selector and the description. Okay. What are the dynamic pseudo classes available? The dynamic pseudo classes we have, one is link, colon link. That is a dynamic pseudo class. And we have colon visited. And we have colon hover. And we have active. And focus. These are the dynamic pseudo classes. Actually, these are the selectors. So we have link, we have visited, we have hover. Why they are called as pseudo? Because link is the name, but it will not work for link element. So that means not for link element. It will work for anchor element actually. Anchor element. So that's the reason their names will be similar to existing, but they will not work exactly for that particular purpose every time, means for that element every time. That's the reason we call this as a pseudo, right? Technically, what is the point about this link is when we are defining the link, we are configuring the link. Usually what happens is it will specify effects for an hyperlink, effects for an hyperlink, So it specifies an effect for hyperlink, that is directly link actually. Visited means for hyperlink, that's it. Yeah, visited means it defines effects. So for visited link, it defines effects for visited links. Hover means it defines effects when mouse is over the link, right? And active means it defines effect. Effect when link is in active state. Usually it will be in active state when you hold down the key on link, then it will be in active state actually. Focus, so when element gets focus, so it defines effects when element gets focus. That is what actually dynamic pseudo classes, these call as dynamic pseudo classes, right? So how to use dynamic pseudo classes, how they work, let's see. Technically, how we can use these options, right? For that, simple, I can take one example for this. So here we have some link configured here. Right. And here we have some links. So let's add a link here. So anchor and href is equal to some sample.html. Okay, this is sample page. And anchor href is equal to so home.html. This is home, like this. Anchor href is equal to contact.html. So this is contact. Okay, just run this and see here. Now usually these links are defined with colors. So we have a sample page, home, contact. Here we have the options here. Now you can see this by default normal in appearance. I just given just a side by side here. Now if I want to change their appearance, then anchor. For anchor, generally we have an option link. Link indicates the normal state. So a normal state, so I defined color as suppose green. So that is the normal state color. And the text decoration as none. Then normal link, it will be in green color without any underline. That is normal link. If link is visited, I want to keep it anchor visited. Visited, if link is visited, if it is a visited, this is the selector for visited links. If link is visited, then we have to put the color as gray. Put the color as gray. So then visited links color will be gray color here. You can see home is in the gray color here. And active, if the link is active, active. If the link is active, then color as red. We can apply several effects. That means when I move the mouse onto it and I click the mouse button, you see it is active. Then it is in this way, contact. There are no contacts here. So that means this is active. Active means it will be in this way. So this is visited. This is not visited. Once it is visited, it is not there and it is normal. Its color will be changed to this once it is visited. If there is a page by that name, it is visited, it change the color like this. Another option, hover. Hover indicates when mouse pointer is over. Hover. Hover indicates when mouse pointer is over. This is not just for links. You can use in several locations. So when hover, I said text decoration, text decoration as underline. That means you can see when mouse pointer is over, an underline will come. And mouse pointer is out, then normal. You can define on mouse over. On mouse over, we can define that. That is hover. Hover is not just only for links. You can use for any. For example, we have a div. So we have an image. Image size is equal to image width, image source is equal to some / images / some speaker .jpg. So this is image. Now here we are writing for img. Wherever image is there, width is 100 pixel and height is 100 pixel. So by default, image height and width is 100 pixel. And when image is hover, that means mouse is over that particular element. Width is some 200 pixel and height is 200 pixel. Later we will learn in effects, and you can see now when mouse pointer is over, it will show that size. When mouse pointer is over, it will increase the size. When out, it is normal. These type of options we will see later with animations, effects and all. That you will see later. Some duration should be slow, animation should be more. It should rotate, it should 2D, 3D. Others we will see in the next level, we will discuss. But this is hover. Hover is used in every occasion. But active, visited, these are used for links. These three are for links. We have another option, that is focus. Focus means when any element gets focus. Any element gets focus. That means technically, for example, we designed and worked with forms. Suppose we have a text box, data list, data term, name, and we have data definition, input type is equal to text. Okay. Similarly, another data term as some password. Okay. And data definition, so input type is equal to password. Generally, whenever user goes there to enter some value, when it gets focus, I want some appearance for that. Then what we can do is, here we can write input. Here we can write input. When input : so focus, when it gets focus, then what should happen? When it gets focus, we can display something, we can add something, right? We can add some effects, configure some effects. So when it gets the focus, we can add some effects. That means I can make it bold, I can make it appearance with the different type of contents, like you can see, I will say border as 2 pixel solid, some green. Okay. And I said box shadow. So 2 pixel, so and 2 pixel and 3 pixel and green, like this. So that is the effect I want to give when it is in focus. Generally, when it is in focus, when it is focus, I want to get that and display, right? So then once we want to configure that when it is in focus, right? Then generally what we can do is, you can see when I click inside it, then it gets focus, then it gets that color. When element gets focus, then it gets that color, then it gets the color. So these are the pseudo selected, how we can configure and use the pseudo selected, the pseudo class selector, how we can manage the pseudo class selector. So this is the option for pseudo selector. That means we are configuring. So, and we are defining when element gets focus. So on focus, it is changing the effect. Yeah. The same thing we can apply for any element. When it gets focus, we can define somehow. See, you can apply, here I am using type. You can apply based on class. You can apply, that means you can add this to any. It can be an ID, it can be a type, or it can be a class. For example, these text boxes are accessed through some class name, or they are accessed by using a ID. Then you can use them. That means I'm saying that, suppose this is having a class called, suppose text element, or text say shadow effect, a class called shadow. So that means they have a class called shadow. Okay, so that means they are applied with the class shadow. Then here what we can do is, we want to apply that to those classes. Currently, refresh here. Here I need to apply to those classes. Here focus, by default it gets focus for everything. Now here we will just put an option like what is the shadow? Shadow is the class, and here we have to define dot. That means whenever it gets focus, it can apply. It can have a class, it can have an ID. If it is shadow is an ID given for those elements, then what you can do here, instead of dot, you can use an hash, and that is shadow. On that, when it is focus, you can write anyway. If you want to apply every occurrence, then you don't need ID. I think you already know that you don't need an ID. We can directly just keep that type selector there. So you can apply anywhere. It's on type, it's on class, it's on ID, or any kind of option. So this is giving an additional effects to that particular element. That's on focus, and on active, on hover, on visited, on link. These are the options how we can manage. Right? These are all the dynamic pseudo classes. For all of these, one example I am giving here. For all of these, one example here. So let's paste this example. This is one example for all of them. This is one example for all of them, right? Next, important in the selectors, we have another category, that is the target pseudo class. We have another category, the target pseudo class. In the classes, so this all comes under the category of dynamic pseudo classes. So another important is we have target pseudo class. Target pseudo class, we have only one option here. Target pseudo class, we have only one option here. Actually, target pseudo class is defined by using a target. That means it is defined by using only one option here. So target pseudo class, and what is that class? Selector. So selector and a description, the selector and description. The target pseudo class, the selector is technically colon target. That is the selector. What is the intention of this selector? What is the intention of this target? And how this target can work? Actually, it defines effects to element. It defines effect to element when it becomes target, when it becomes target of any link click, when it becomes target of any link click. So, or you can simply say that when it is accessed as a target on link click, when it is accessed as target on link click, that is important. It defines effect to element when it is accessed as target on link click. Usually this is a target selector. Generally, how you can define this target pseudo class, how you can configure this target pseudo class. Let's see one simple example for that. So I am defining an effect here. Okay. So we are adding some example for the target demo .html. For this, you need to design one simple example. You remembered we learned about intra-document navigation. We have to use this intra-document navigation, then easy to understand here. So target demo. Okay. So we have the body. Yeah. In the body section, so we are designing some menu header. In the header, we have a menu, and the menu is having some options. So like we have a span. Okay. And here we defined the option inside the span as a link. This is for HTML, and another span, just a pipe symbol. Another span, this is for CSS, and another span, just pipe symbol. Another span, this is for JavaScript. Okay. Just we designed a menu here. We configured a menu here. HTML, CSS, JavaScript, a menu like option here. Now, what we are doing is here below this header, we keep a section. In the section, so we are defining the options. So we are defining the options like, suppose we have a div. This is div. This div have a heading like HTML. So it is having some paragraph, right? It is a markup language like this. That is about one. Another div and heading 3, this is CSS. So it defines styles for HTML elements. Okay, another div, and this is for having a heading like JavaScript. It's paragraph, so it is a language. So for client side, server side, and database, something like this. Okay. So some paragraphs, some contents information is available here. It is the presentation here. That is the content here defined there. Now, important is for this ID, for this div, I'm giving an ID HTML. For second div, I'm giving an ID as CSS. And third ID JS, JavaScript. Okay. Now, usually you have seen intra-document navigation. HTML on click href, hash HTML. You know this. Href, this is hash CSS. And href is hash JS. Already we learned this. In intra-document navigation, I showed you. While working with the links, we designed it. Here the point is, this content that you are currently watching is not having much option. This is not having much option for scrolling. We don't have much option for scrolling. Then if I click on that HTML CSS, it will not show any difference there. It will not show any difference there. Sometimes this situation comes because we don't have any content for scrolling. If there is a lot of content for scrolling, then it will automatically scroll to the topic and it will display. Already we know that. It will automatically scroll to the topic and display. We generally know that, right? But important is currently there is no content for scrolling. Then how you know that this topic is selected? Then what we can do is you can see that. So when I click CSS, CSS became target. That means you can see in the URL hash CSS. We know that it became target, but it is unidentified. We cannot identify that it is target until or unless we see the URL, right? Then what we can do is, so we can define one effect here. See, generally what we can do is, wherever these options are there, these divs. For this div, we can put a class as topic. For every div which is having a topic, we will give as topic. For every div, we will give topic. That means for every div, you have topic class. Okay. Normally in the style, what should happen is, so dot topic, it is the class. So this topic class should have some margin as 10 pixel. So margin as 10 pixel, and background color as some gray, some light gray, or gray. Okay. And color, so color as white, like this, gray, white, some options here. So I'm defining this gray, white. Okay. And we can give some color. Suppose I'll say some green, white. So that is the color for every topic. And I will give some padding as 10 pixel, spaces and all. And I give some border as 1 pixel, solid and green. Okay. And that is basically how it appears, like black. So this is the general topics. All the topics are like this here. All the topics are like this. We have some space 10 pixel and defined there. Now when user clicks on that, and if that becomes target, that means dynamically if it becomes target, that div becomes target, that then how you will decide that it became target? We can just access topic colon target. If it became target, then what we will do is we will change the background color. So background color, we will change the background color to black. We will change the background color to black, and we will change the color to white. Color to white. So we are adding this option for that particular content. Just background color black. So that is because already color is white, no need to give this color white. Suppose see, we haven't given that, just background color black. That means now see what happens is in the design. This indicates that if it is target, right? Now see, CSS is black. I click on HTML, you can see HTML becomes target. I click on CSS, CSS become target. And JavaScript becomes target. So that means we can identify that it is currently highlighted, so that you can manage by using these target selectors. Because if it is scrollable like content, then you can scroll to that location. If it is not scrollable, then it is difficult to identify whether it is the result of target or not. Result of target or not. That is the reason it's very important that we have to configure the target. We have to configure the target. So we need to define the target. That means if that particular element, that means this topic is this div. If it is becoming target, remember, to become target, it should have an ID. To become a target, it should have an ID. If it is having an ID and it becomes the target for that ID, target to that particular ID. In that case, so you can have configure, you can generally have, we can define some effects. So, and how it can become target? Usually when link clicks, it can become target by using this href. So this is a target pseudo class, target pseudo class. Whenever you are selecting a topic, the topic will be highlighted, right? This is mostly used with the links and ID combination and while working with intra-document navigation. Generally, target means why it is called pseudo. Pseudo because target means usually in HTML, target means it opens in a new tab, it opens in a frame. Target have a different term. Target have different term. But here it is indicating that if it element becomes target of any link, then it will define the effects and display the effects. So that is the another important pseudo selector, target pseudo selector. So for this important point is the element must have an ID. The element must have an ID defined. Element must have an ID defined. That is important. So example, this is an example for that. This is an example for that. Just now we learned pseudo is an English word, right? Pseudo means it names looks like already what you have used in HTML, but it is not exactly that. That is called pseudo. Understood? It is a general English word, right? Pseudo means it names look like already what you know, but it is not that. It is different. Same, like, alike, right? That is why it is pseudo. Yeah, this is an example for that pseudo selector. So this is one example for that. So I will copy that and I will see here, this is example for pseudo. So this is target pseudo selector, target pseudo selector. Yeah, that is one important class we have. Another important we have the UI element. The UI element states pseudo class, pseudo classes. the UI element states pseudo classes. We have the UI element states pseudo classes. Technically, what are these UI element states pseudo classes? UI element states pseudo classes. Actually, UI element states pseudo classes. Generally, these are element states. Element states is generally elements have different states. Elements have different states. So here, let's say selector and description, right? Yeah. Elements have several states actually. What are the states for element? Like disable, like enable, like read only. These are states. We generally call them as UI element states pseudo classes, right? And we have options. What are the options? We have enabled, we have disabled, we have checked, we have read only. This comes under the pseudo classes. This comes under the pseudo classes. That means we have colon enabled, enabled. So we have colon disabled, disabled. So we have options like colon read only, read only. We have option like checked, checked. So these are the states related pseudo classes. These are the states related pseudo classes. So states related pseudo classes are also important here. The purpose of this states related pseudo class is, so how it works is, let's say, that means it verifies the state. It verifies, actually these will verify the state. These will verify the state of element. That means enabled, it defines effects. It defines effects when element is enabled. Enabled. Similarly, it defines effects when element is disabled. Disabled, and it defines effects. It defines effects when element is configured with read only, with read only, with read only property. So with read only property. So and checked means it defines when any defines effects on checked status of radio, checkbox, etc. Checked status of radios and checkbox. Usually radio and checkbox. It is for radio and checkbox. Checked status for the radios and checkboxes. So these are the selectors. So we have enabled, we have disabled, we have read only options. That means depending on so which effect it is, like you can put them. Generally, dynamically we can change disabled, enabled. That you will learn in JavaScript, how to disable and enable dynamically. When you learn in JavaScript, you can handle them. Here, so I will just put here state selectors, HTML. Okay. And here I'm adding some options to understand doc type HTML head. Okay. So head and title. So we have a title and some state selectors. Okay. Here we configuring in the body section. Suppose we have a form. Generally we have body, so we have a form. So we have a input, so name. So here we have input. So input type is equal to text. And here we have a button. So button as submit. Okay. Usually this is the appearance for the design that we created. So this is that. Now, generally, in forms, we use a lot of validations. Generally, we use a lot of validation. Technically, we use a lot of validations. When we use validations, usually what happens is, based on validation, we need to enable, disable this. Enabling, disabling can be dynamically done. We can disable, enable dynamically. But when you disable, enable, their effects should be changed. That is important. For example, see here now. This is submit button. Mouse pointer is in this way. Suppose I added disable. So submit is disabled. Then it is like this. I want more effects for that. When it is disabled, I want more effects for that. So because it is disabled, because they haven't entered name. When they enter name, it will be enabled. That you do in JavaScript, not right, to verify whether the value entered or not. We are applying effects on state. If it is disabled state can be acquired from any type. Directly you can mention, or you can get from JavaScript and apply them. So when you are applying through script or applying directly, if it is disabled, then what effects should come? If it is enabled, what effect should come? That means we need to configure. So in the style, suppose we have a button. If button is disabled, then I will put here, so background color as gray. So background color as gray, and color as white, gray, and color as white. One more is, if it is disabled, I will change the cursor to, so not allowed cursor. Cursor will be like not allowed. If it is disabled, it is not allowed. Then you can see currently it is disabled and it is showing like this. When I move the mouse onto it, you can see it shows not available cursor, not allowed cursor. A red circle with a slash, that is unavailable. That means it is not available. It is not available. If it is enabled, then I want different effects for that. That means you can see when I move the mouse onto it, you can see this is not allowed. Not allowed cursor is coming on that submit, right? So when it is allowed, that means if it is enabled, button, if it is enabled, then background color. So we say some blue, some green, something like this, and color, so white, and cursor we will give as cursor as grab means hand symbol like will come, and you can see currently it is disabled. Okay, let's go to the code and remove the disabled. That means it is enabled. If it is enabled, then it will be green with hand symbol on it. It's working fine. So when it is disabled, that means if you set disabled, then automatically it will get the disabled effect. You can give it for any element. Suppose you write for input, then wherever input element is disabled, it will give you that effect. Generally, input elements, we can give read only also. Suppose in this text box, we have a name John. So name, you cannot edit. Then if I cannot edit, I will keep at read only. If I keep read only, then you can see, so you cannot edit. So that means it's an, not name, we will give value as John. Okay. And you can see that it will display that John. But it looks like I can make changes into it. But until or unless I click there and edit, I cannot identify that. That's the reason we need a proper effect when it is read only. then we generally use input. When input is read only, then what should happen? When input is read only, then we will define the color as red, and cursor we will define cursor we will define as not allowed. Not allowed cursor will come. That means it will be red color and not allowed will come. That will be easy to tell. You cannot modify that. When it is read only. If read only is removed, then you will not get that. It is normal. You can make changes into it. If read only is defined, it will get that effect and display, right? So we can change read only to normal read write to read only dynamically by using JavaScript. Here we have to see, when we are using JavaScript, these will be very handy options to use, because you need this regularly, verifying the state of the particular element, and if state is changing, automatically apply different effects so that user can easily identify that. So this is how we can configure. So we can configure on that element. That is how we can use this enable, disabled, and read only. This is one example. Example one. This is for these options. How we can manage the read only, disabled, enabled like options. Another example, we will see how this checked is used, how we can manage the checked option. How do we deal with the checked option and define the checked option? Usually what happens is, so when you are configuring, so checked option, how to define. So it can be used for checkboxes or radios. You can do that. Suppose let's design another one. So let's create a new file here, checkeddemo.html. Okay, let's create a file. So head and HTML is not there. Okay, so here we are configuring title as checked demo. Okay, in the body section, I'm just giving a simple div. I will just put here terms of service. So just I will keep a field set better with a legend as terms of service. And in this, we can use a text area. We can put some content, or I'm just giving a div. So div. So, and inside this div, suppose I'm just giving some paragraph information. So that means, so let's copy and paste some paragraph there. You can use text areas. You can use divs, right? Text area will provide the text so that you can modify or you can lock it. Suppose you see here a paragraph is there. Okay. Now, in this paragraph here, this is the paragraph. We configured that. Now here we are defining. So we are configuring the effect. So how you configure the effect for elements? Suppose in this, you can test this once first. So this is the normal option here, terms of service is there. Okay. Actually for the div we have, so this is the div, and for the div I will put a class called note. Okay. And here we will put a style. So we will put a style, and here dot note. So, and we have width as 500 pixel. So, and or some, yeah, so 500 pixel or 400 pixel, and height as some 300 pixel or 250 pixel. Okay, and this makes the div appear like this, and justify here text align to justify. Okay, and background hyphen color, so gray. So suppose some light gray, I'm defining some light gray, and this is the content here. And important is when it is having the content more to scroll or configure here. Suppose the height is some 200 and width is some 300. So width is some 300 or 500 something. Yeah, it will be in this way. Now, generally what happens is if there is more content to adjust in that, then we can just put some scrollable options also. Suppose 100 is the pixels, then it will be like this. Now, when it is like this, that means the content is more than the div. Then usually what we can do is overflow. We can put as scroll. That means overflowed content will be scrolled. This is the terms of service, they can scroll. Okay. Under this terms of service, this is a general div. We are not using any text area, right? Here we have an option. Here we configure a checkbox. Input type is equal to checkbox. And in the checkbox, so here beside the checkbox, we are adding a span. We are adding a span beside the checkbox. And this checkbox, the span contains I accept. So this is the design here. That means we have a checkbox, and beside the checkbox, we have a span. In the span, we have I accept. Now, important is when it is checked. If it is not checked, I need to show a warning saying that it should be selected. Then what we can do is here, how to define a span which is present beside checkbox. We can use our knowledge of so input attribute selector type is equal to checkbox. Input type is equal to checkbox. If input type is checkbox, adjacent selector is plus span. The span beside the selector, what should happen for that? It should have a color, so red. It should have a color red. So we are defining that. That means the span beside the checkbox will have a red color. It will have a color red. That means you can see here the span beside the checkbox is red color because that is the adjacent selector. This is the adjacent selector. Now what should happen is input. We can verify whether input type is equal to checkbox. If it is checkbox and it is checked state, it is a checkbox checked state. That means checkbox is checked, selected. Then adjacent span should have color green. That's it. Now you can see here, this is, I selected this now. That means I am selecting this checkbox, then it will be turned to green color. I am not selecting that checkbox, then it will be turned to red color. That means it will be changing automatically. So based on checked state, it will be changing automatically. So we don't need to write any effects or anything. So these are, some are advanced in CSS, some are old, some are advanced in CSS. So we are learning, we don't care about what is the there in the old version. We are learning advanced version. We will learn everything in advanced, whatever available in CSS. So important, so regularly used is this here. You are not selecting, then it will be like this. We selected, then it will be in this. You can use for this checked, obviously you can use for your radios. So if radio is checked, then you want to apply some color, means which option they selected. Based on that, we can configure. Usually, you know that radios have a common name. So common name. Radios also can be used with checked property. So for example, suppose I have another field set, and in the legend, we have the options. So suppose say choose payment. So payment. So we have an option choose payment. Another field set is there, choose payment. And here we are having input type is equal to radio, and have a name as pay. Okay. And here we say as cash. And input type, type is equal to radio, and name is pay. Now it is difficult to identify this cash because it is literal. So then we keep this in a span, to keep in a span, right? And here also we keep in a span, that is credit card. Okay. And we are defining another input type is equal to radio, and we have a name, so configured as pay. And here we have a span, so span, and we have option like UPI, right? Something. And you can see that this is another field set with other options here. Cash, credit card, or UPI. Which one they selected? I need to highlight that one. Which one they selected? I need to highlight that. So in that case, usually what we have to do is we need to define a option here. That means if input type is equal to radio, then in that case, input type is equal to radio, then span. So beside that, we just want some effect to display. What is the default effect here? That means I want the span color, all the color to be some gray, all the color to be gray. That means all the color will be to gray. And if input type is equal to radio, and it is checked, then the span adjacent to it, it must be applied with the color. So color as some black, or as some green, something like this. It should be applied there. And you can see here, so when I click on cash, then it will be green. Credit card, it will be green. UPI, it will be green. You can apply any effects. Suppose I say border as 1 pixel, solid. That means solid. So here we defined some effect there. That means here, when I select credit card, it will be selected. So this is UPI, credit card, so cash. Which one you are choosing, it will display that effect for that. So that means which one is selected, it will display that. So that makes good, right? That means here selected, if not selected, it will show alternative colors. So you can use this for radios. So you can use for checkboxes. So radios and checkboxes, we can configure and define these options. So this is the option for working with technically selecteds, and these are all under the category of pseudo. And state selectors, they come under the category of state selectors. And after understanding the state selectors. So in the state selectors, we have one more option is the UI elements. So validation states. So can be defined validation states, pseudo classes. So the UI selectors, validation state pseudo classes are present. So the UI element, validation state pseudo classes are present. The UI element validation state pseudo classes are present. Technically, what is this validation state pseudo classes? That means generally validation state is also present for HTML elements. Validation state for HTML element means nothing but usually validation states also present. So what is that validation state? So we have validation states. So let's see what are the validation states we have. We have a validation state selector and a description. What are the validation states available and how actually they are configured? Validation state selectors. Generally, validation state selectors, technically, validation state selectors, we have valid, we have invalid, we have invalid. So we have required. So we have required. So we have optional. So we have in range. So we have out of range. So we have the selector like pattern. We can even also use the pattern selector also for that. That means we can use valid, invalid, depends on the patterns also, right? So technically this comes under the validation. Actually pattern is valid or invalid. That means it will directly define valid or invalid. Pattern comes under the valid, invalid. How you state that the element is valid or element is not valid, how you configure that? That is another important thing you should know. So that means how you configure that it is valid or invalid. Because HTML5 have new validation states. HTML5 have new validation states. So based on that, we can configure them. For example, to use these validation states, we need to use HTML validations actually. So validation state.html. So one option I will show here. So others we can implement one example also. So based on validation state, we can configure that. So suppose we are defining validation. Okay. So here we are designing a form. So we are designing a form. So yeah. So in the form, so we have a div. So in that we have a label. Just we defined the label as username. And another div and text box input type is equal to text. Okay, that is one div. And we have another div. So this div have a label. Okay, label some password. And we have a div and input type is equal to password. Some more options we can add later, we'll see. For this div, I will put a class as form group, right? And this is another class called form group. Okay. And here we are writing style. Wherever the form comes, so width for the form is 300 pixels. And padding for the form is some 20 pixels. And justify content. This all you are going to learn in the next level. To center, align items to center, Okay. So this is margin. I will give as margin as auto. Okay. That is the form. And we have form group dot form group, because that is a class we created. Form group margin top. Margin top should be 10 pixels. Okay. 10 or 20 pixels. Okay. And wherever we have that form and see here. So that is displayed there. So this is the form. Just I kept here. Now important. So here we have so many options to handle. So many options to handle. Here, so this text boxes, suppose this text box is having a required attribute, required. And if it is not filled with required, that means it is invalid. If it is filled with required, it is valid. Then we will write here. So input, if input is required, so we can add required, or we can write valid, invalid. We will see both options first. Suppose if it is invalid, if input is invalid, then border as 1 pixel, solid red color border. Box shadow, so 2 pixel and 4 pixel red color. That is for invalid. If input is valid, then border 1 pixel solid, so it is green. And box shadow, I will define 2 pixel, 3 pixel and 4 pixel. So that is green. Same effect I will define here. That means here we don't need any scripting or anything. If required is not fulfilled, it will be red and green colors. Of course, password is also required. Then for password also I will give required. Then you can see password also red color. So that means if it is invalid, it will keep this red color. Okay, I entered the username, then it is okay. I entered the password, then it is okay. I am not entering the username, then it will be again red color. You are entering that, then it will be normal. So that means based on its state, valid or invalid. Validation can be defined in several. That means you can define required, you can define min length, you can define max length, you can define patterns, you can use so many validations. And based on that, we can apply the effects, configure and define the effects. So the other options one by one with example, what is required, what is optional, valid, invalid, that validation states, based on validation states, how to define the effects. These we will discuss in tomorrow's session detail, right? Tomorrow I will give you examples for this, valid, invalid, required, because when to use valid, when to use required, these things also we should know. So that is important. So tomorrow we will see, and tomorrow I will give examples for them separately, how to deal with them. And some more selectors are there. So we need to learn those selectors also. Then mostly by tomorrow we can finish selectors. Then we can start effects, how to work with them. Okay, right.